Today, we're going to go over this identity in international finance called the basic savings identity. Savings and investment identity. The basic idea is that when a country saves more than it invests, then there is a current account surplus. And when a country invests more than it saves, then that country has a current account deficit. So let's start with the basic equation of what GDP is. Let GDP be Y, let C be consumption, let I be national investment, let G be government spending, let X be export, and let M be imports. Let's define savings as S is equals to, since Y is the output, you can also think of Y as a type of national income, because for every output that is being sold, someone else's is someone else's income. So you can think of the national output as the same thing as the national income. So let S be the national savings, and let Y be the national output or national income, minusing consumption, which the national consumption, that's kind of obvious, minusing government spending, G, and this would be S would be the national savings. Now we plug Y into this equation, and what we have is going to be the C is going to be eliminated, the G is going to be eliminated. What we have is I plus export minusing imports. Now, if we subtract I, the investment, from both sides, we have S minusing I is equals to X minusing M. Now, this is export minusing imports, and this is very similar to, or a major component of, the current account. So also known as CA. If CA is less than 0, then it's a deficit. If CA is greater than 0, then it is a surplus. What's interesting, oh, by the way, export and import is often associated with trade imbalances or trade balance. Trade balance. So it's very fascinating that that trade imbalance is related to the general savings and investment rate within a country. Now, if a country, I think in real world scenario, we want to look at what are some countries, what are some of these countries where this equation is applicable. Think of China, right? China is a country that saves more than it invests, and because of that, its current account is positive. So China, maybe even Japan, I believe. Japan save more than it produces, right? And or say more than it invests. So thus we have CA is bigger than 0. The United States, UK, are countries that invest more than they they save. Then it follows that their CA is less than 0, right? They're, so invest more than they save. So the I is bigger than S, so their capital account is less than 0. But ultimately, we live in a single world, right? We live in a single world. We live in a single world where both countries, like China and US, exist. So it means that if, in China's terms, if China can save more than it, in the case of we know that China has a positive current account surplus, so CA for China is going to be bigger than 0. That means that its savings is bigger than 0. That means that savings is bigger than investment. Similarly, the CA for the US is less than 0. It means that it's less than 0. It means that savings is less than investment. Ultimately, the savings from one country, the savings from China, savings in the US, let's say this is China, this is the US. When basically in this case, since China saved a lot and US doesn't save that much, right? Save less than it invests, whereas China save more than it invests. Savings from China is moving from China to the US, right? In the form of savings. And so the savings, China has more savings than they can invest, and the US give China investments, I guess. And this is, at the end of the day, have to balance. And these investments would be in the form of US bonds and stocks, right? US stocks. All right, we're gonna look into some applications of the savings investment identity. As we shown before, savings minusing investment equals to export minusing import, which approximately equals to the current account. Okay, we can look at it from perspective of individual countries with respect to the rest of the world. So from an individual country perspective, let's take the country, let's say the United States, and the rest of the world. Rest of the world. So the savings investment identity applies to this situation as well. Take, for example, this is the savings for the US. By the way, we can denote this as the rest of the world. Savings as rest of the world minusing savings for the US equals to export minusing imports equals to the current account of the US. So as you can see, um, this whole identity, as long as this holds whenever if okay, so the current account would be positive if savings is greater than investment, right? If the United States on the whole save more than it invests, then the current account is going to be positive. So these are structural issues related to the United States. It so happens that in the United States, they invest more than they save. What I mean by that would be there is a lot of maybe debt in the form of treasury bills, stocks that the U.S. are kind of investing, right? And the I in this case is much greater than S. So because of that, United States have a very big negative current account. But that just means this. But the current account, the current account of the U.S. is negative, right? So because in the case of the United States, investment is much greater than savings. But when it comes to the rest of the world, for the United States to have a negative current account, it must be the case that the rest of the world current account for the rest of the world must be positive. So the current account for the rest of the world must be positive, and it must be such that the current account of all of the countries must be equal to zero. So, the current account of rest of the world plus the current account of the U.S. has to be equal to zero. But that's just okay. That just uh, is saying that that yeah, the current account of both countries has to be equal to zero. For so the current account of the rest of the world plus the current account of the U.S. has to be equal to zero. But that's just the same as saying that the savings of the U.S. my minusing the saving the investment of the U.S. by the way plus the savings of the rest of the world minusing the investment of the rest of the world must be equal to zero. But this is the same as saying that the savings of the U.S. plus the savings of the rest of the world must equal to the investment of the U.S. plus the investment for the rest of the world. In this case, the rest of the world will be excluding the United States. So, yeah. So this is another interesting conclusion. What this equation shows is that the low savings in the United States and the savings from the rest of the world must equals to the investment from the rest of the world and the investment from the United States. Uh, it's we can say maybe we can think of it this way that for the in the case of the United States, savings rate is very small, right? The rest of the world in comparison is very big. But in the case of the investment in the United States, because they produce a lot of treasury bills that they're selling to the rest of the world, they have a lot of stock markets. Investment in this case is very big. Investment is from the rest of the world would be much smaller in relation. Another way of seeing it would be that suppose that we know that another way of thinking about it is that savings minus investment equals to export minus import equals to current account. But in the case of the world, of the whole world, from the perspective of the whole world, from the perspective of the whole world, it must be the case that the sum total of all of the current account for each country must sum to zero, right? So CA world is equals to the sum of all of the countries of the CA, where where I is world, each country in the world, right, has to be summed to zero. That means that the savings from the world minusing the investment from the world has to be equals to the current account of the world, which is equal to zero. But that's just the same as the savings from the rest of the world has to be equals to the investment for the rest of the world. That's another interesting result